I want to talk about our blog and all the information we showed the parents about our inquiry that we did. So do you want to talk a bit about how we started? Where did we begin here?
Well, we started with the forces of gravity.
Okay, so do you remember a big question that we had?
How can we increase the speed and height of a moving object?
Okay, so in order to figure that out, what did we start with?
We started with
What unit did we do first? Do you remember?
roller coasters.
We did our roller coaster unit. And so with that roller coaster unit, what were we doing?
We were using marbles and like pipes, sort of,
Yeah.
and just seeing what we can do with them.
And so when we did that part, we did that to get to a big idea. Do you remember what the big idea was?
We learned that if you are like up, it'll go faster, but if you go down, it won't go as fast.
Okay, so that was the big idea from that one. And then we took that information, we added onto our big mental file. Remember that? So then we went on to another one. We started dropping things off the playground. Why did we do that?
Well, we did that because we wanted to see if like we had like a paper clip or like this ball and drop them and see if they land at the same time.
And did they?
Yep.
And so what was the big idea from that?
We learned that everything that we dropped will go at the same time.
That's right. Okay, let's move on. So when we were doing all of these things, were we doing them as a group or were we each having our own question?
We were doing them as a group.
And so we called that guided inquiry. Okay, so then we went on to sheep in a Jeep and we started running. Do you remember when we were running the Jeeps down this ramp?
Yeah.
Okay, why were we doing that learning?
To see it could like basically the other question for the roller coasters.
Okay, and so we came up with some big ideas. Here they are. Do you remember them?
There's always a push and a pull. The higher the ramp, the faster the Jeep goes, and it's very important to wear a seatbelt.
Yes, and what's the piece with the sandpaper? Remember we added sandpaper to the ramp?
Yeah.
What was that?
It slowed the car down.
Okay, so friction can slow objects down. All right. Then we went into our final piece of front loading, and front loading means all of the information we want to know before we can move on to our own inquiry. So then we started with paper airplanes. And what did we learn with the paper airplanes at the end?
That
What were the forces?
thrust, lift, drag, and gravity.
Good for you. So we had all those forces to play with there. And then we need to know, how do we make this learning our own? So you've got all these big ideas in your head. We're all so much smarter. But now what do we do with this stuff? Where do we go next?
We share it to others.
We did share it with others. And then we also wanted to make it our own. So you got to choose
Our own interest.
your own interest. So you came up with questions. So when we came up with these questions, were they yes/no questions?
No.
Why not?
Because that's just like boring.
It is boring. So what kind of questions did we ask?
We asked, what will happen if when we drop balls of different sizes from the same height? Which air will lift the newspaper, and how does gravity pull things down?
Okay, so these questions we came up with, did they have to have an answer necessarily?
No.
Not always. They don't always have to have an answer, but we're trying to find out the answer, right? So there was lots of good ones. Do you remember Tristan's? It was about how can I increase the speed of marshmallows using a catapult?
And the smallest went the farthest.
That's right. So then we did all of this question building, and then what did we have to do? We had to gather stuff.
We had to gather materials and information.
Right. So where did we go to find that?
Well, me and Ruby went to the gym to find balls.
Right. So you had to kind of gather all the things you needed to do your inquiry. And before you actually did your inquiry, what did you make in your head? You had to make, what's that scientific word?
Mental file.
Yes, but we had to have a guess. Do you remember what the guess is
Oh.
called?
A hypothesis.
We had to come up with a hypothesis. So that hypothesis was based on your,
Outcome.
yeah, what we learned before, your big idea, and what you think is going to happen. Okay, so then we went on and we actually investigated, and we came up with a bunch of different experiments that we did.
Yep.
And we videotaped them. So let's show them one of the videotapes. This was how can we use friction and thrust to keep a table setting on the table while the cloth is pulled out. So let's watch this one.